And this conversation is absolutely one of the most important conversations, I think, as a society at this point that we need to take because we know that
Hello, Intactivist. I am back with Sherrie Saunders.
I am thankful to be here again to speak to you guys. I'm happy to speak to you as an activist from Alabama for over 25 years. Pretty effective activist.
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought that up. So you've been an activist for 25 years. And how long have you been an intactivist fighting against circumcision for?
At least 18 years. I would say that because of that's how old my son is. And I began to advocate for intactivism when I knew I was pregnant with my son.
Okay, awesome. So from your perspective, how well is the intactivist movement doing compared to your other activists' efforts and how they're doing?
As a movement, what I see is that there are great messaging coming out. It is of a very personal and intimate nature to speak about genitalia. And in this aspect, activism, we are talking about a procedure that is common. Most people don't even think twice about it. They just assume that it's something that has to take place. So, in the aspect of this activism, you are trying to educate a community and to educate the entire United States on a concern that is looked at as something common that is to take place. So as a movement, I think that the messaging is coming out. I don't know that there are many mainstream channels that are giving a platform for those that are willing to speak about this. I can't say that I've seen it on mainstream TV, except maybe when they show a short video clip of a protest. Oftentimes it is Bloodstained Men clips. That would be Brother K and the Bloodstained Men. It's an activist group that goes out and they have billboards. They stand on street corners. They put themselves out for people to see. I believe they're going to be at the Super Bowl this year, and so with them, they present an image where they wear white clothing and they have a red paint stain over the genitalia. So it's quite striking to see the visual of everyone dressed in white, and then to have that big red stain right at the crotch area. It opens up conversation, and I know that in videos that I've seen, oftentimes that he has posted, there are people that will ridicule, they make comments, negative comments. And there are also, though, comments that are positive. But I think it's just so striking and people are not expecting it. And in that moment when they see it, they don't know how to take it. Because if they're a mother and they chose to have this procedure, it was just something common. It was just like signing off on the birth certificate. It's you get your baby, you get your circumcision, and you get to go home. It's that common. It's that common way of thinking that needs to change. But as a movement, I do think that there are some positive activists that are speaking outwards about this. I certainly wish that we could get more platform within mainstream media. But as social media, I see the TikTok videos where men give testimonials and mothers regret moms that give testimonials. So in that case, it is positive. And it is very exciting to see that there are podcasters and platforms that are willing to put this out there so that it becomes more common to speak about. And then hopefully it will become as common to speak about and to educate for as it is as common to accept it and to perform it. So that's where I'm hoping that this goes as far as an activist platform and an activist movement.
Okay. So we heard about your past intactivism efforts. What do you plan in the future to help the intactivist movement?
So I have a radio show. It's called United Voices. It's a blog talk radio. My producer is Marcus Eccles here in Alabama. He has always been known as a political activist. He graduate of Alabama A&M. He has been very vocal in Alabama politics. So to have him on my side as a producer has been enormous for assisting me in getting word out. So what I am going to do is in my capacity for 2024 through 2026 currently, I am a appointed parent advocate with the Alabama Council for Developmental Disability. That is a program that receives federal funds. We get to vote on where those funds go, what programs receive those funds, what legislation is presented before the Alabama legislature for votes. So, one of the things that I am doing right now is following the progress of the bills that are taking place in New Hampshire for the bodily autonomy, where you have more informed consent in one bill, and the second bill deals mainly with the Medicaid funding for the procedure itself. So, what I plan on doing is using my access to other activists here in the state that care about bodily autonomy and bringing forth this movement, these bills like what's coming forth in New Hampshire, and getting some momentum here in Alabama to back up New Hampshire, and perhaps get a bill here where we can protect the rights of infants, that they're not forced at birth to have this elective procedure done upon them. I also plan on having continued shows outside of the radio with perhaps podcasts. I love to hold protests. It's fun to me to stand out. You know, sometimes when the police show up, it can get a little hairy, but the fun aspect of it is that you get to talk to people that want to know why you were there. What are you protesting? What is this about? And at that moment, you can make a friend for life. You can make a foe for life in that moment. But it is positive always to have an opportunity to speak about anything that has to do with human rights. So I'm going to make, for my own personal activism here in Alabama, I'm going to use this conversation of bodily autonomy to help educate on human rights and what human rights are, how to obtain them, why should we have them, what rights are we already given, and what rights must we fight for. So it's a for me it is going to be a tool that I put in my tool belt, this conversation that I can bring forth and use at times when I want to speak about the rights of humans, in this case, men, although women also have issues with genital mutilation. In this country, it is not readily accepted to mutilate the clitoris of an infant girl or a young girl. But in some cultures that do exist in this country, and in some communities, those cultures exist. And there have been arrests where there has been a genital mutilation surgery done upon female children. So that is positive that they are arresting and prosecuting for that. But I think that same mindset needs to blend over into what is happening to our boys. We do not give them the same rights or the same respect. And in that aspect, I am confused as to why we want to give respect to the female child for bodily autonomy, but we don't see that that same respect needs to blend to the male child. So I hope that in conversations that I can inspire a change of heart, a change of thought processing, and that overall that change takes place in a cultural sense, that we stop looking at this as a common procedure, and then it becomes looked at more as an as need basis. We don't need to prop up the pharmaceutical company anymore with the use of these specimens, these foreskin specimens in their research. I don't think Oprah Winfrey and other celebrities who sell their anti-wrinkle creams that are made from the fibroblast, the received from infant penile cells needs to be used. I get why they want their lines and their wrinkles to go away so their skin glows. I get all of that and I understand that. But I don't think it's right to allow a procedure to be done upon a child so that you can have glowing skin and be proud of your anti-wrinkle age cream. It's astounding to me that we even have to talk about this, that this even happens. But as an activist, what I plan on doing is continuing these conversations and trying to get the parent, the young mother, the maybe that first pregnancy. So she's so excited to have her baby, and then she finds out she's having a boy. At that moment, I want her to have already heard some information about this procedure so that while she's carrying that child and thinking about the future and how she's going to love this child and nourish this baby, that she also puts in her mind that I need to be an advocate for my own son so that he has an opportunity to grow up with the use of his foreskin, maybe educate her friends who also may, become mothers too. So it becomes common, this conversation. And instead of it becoming an angry or resentful conversation, I want it to become a common conversation where we're not using anger or disrespect, so that I'm not judging the person that made the decision for their son. I'm educating them to look at it differently, to learn to forgive themselves if they become a regret parent. And for the person that the procedure took place upon, the man, I hope that we can make it common in these conversations that we also discuss the aspects of mental health, the the trauma that you receive from this procedure that has been recorded, it has been researched upon. There is MRI evidence, no doubt that changes take place to the brain, permanent changes that take place to the brain in that young male infant that has to grow up. And there are men who make decisions that they get, for example, they get to go to jail for if a woman says no and they're in an intimate encounter and the woman says no, but the man continues, he can be charged with a crime and go to jail for it. But in the aspect of that same individual, when he was in a position of being abused, when he was an infant and he was tied to a board and he was screaming his head off, no one took his no in respect. So the first thing that an infant male child who has this procedure done upon him knows is screaming. It doesn't stop and it doesn't change the problem. It doesn't change the decision that has been made for him. So we ask our men and we educate our young men on the rights of a woman, that the woman has these rights and that you have to respect them. Well, from birth, you took that right from the man. So there has to be some conversations where we take responsibility for the mental health issues that comes from this procedure long term. For example, my husband, he had this procedure done as an infant. It gave him problems. It still to this day gives him problems. And he suffered a lot of anxiety, a lot of shame, a lot of depression, a lot of anger with this. And it affected our marriage. It affected the intimacy that we had. So we are no longer together. We still raise our children together. For him, he has not had another relationship. I have not had another relationship, but I know why he hasn't. He hasn't had another relationship because he doesn't feel confident that he could be intimate with another woman. and no he has no answer, and he doesn't know how to fix this problem. There are not therapists that advertise publicly that, hey, if this has happened to you and you're having performance issues, please come talk to us. We can help you work those out. Those kind of opportunities are not readily available. I don't see them advertised anywhere. What a doctor will tell you if you have performance issue problems is not to go seek a therapist to talk about the anger and the pain that is in the history of the problem, but they'll give you a bottle with some blue pills in it and tell you that if it stays erect for more than 4 hours to go to the emergency room, or you can only have maybe some creams, or maybe we can even give you a penile shaft surgery. We can stick a rod in it so that it stands up now. So the opportunities for helping men to deal with the trauma that happens from the surgery are lacking at this point. I truly hope that this conversation and our activism, as what I will be doing in my conversations when I have an opportunity to speak to legislators, and which also equally gives me opportunity to speak to therapists as my job as an activist with the state, working with disabled people from birth to death. I am going to put this information out there for them to think about so that they start seeing that the depression, maybe in their clients, in these men, the anger, for one, anger is a big issue with some men. The bravado act that they may put out is maybe not ego, maybe it's pain, and they act a certain way because they have a feeling inside that they're trying to hide or they're trying to deal with. So, if we could talk this into a common conversation, then we could start talking about the amount of trauma that has to be dealt with, the 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 lack of intimacy in some relationships that I feel, because it happened to me, the lack of intimacy that in relationships can cause divorce, the anger in the man that can create in him poor decision making, where he ultimately has to suffer incarceration because of a poor decision that he makes. This this conversation needs to take place, and people need to take responsibility for creating this problem. And those people are directly the medical establishment. They need to take responsibility for causing the problem, that their only reaction and their only answer is a pill bottle or a surgical procedure. That's not good enough. That's not going to fix the problem. Clearly, it's not going to fix the problem because it hasn't. The little blue pill only works for so long, and when that pill wears off, the problem remains. So the person inside is still there, even if the act, the sexual intimate act, is over with. The person is still inside. The pain is still there. Nothing has been solved, and we are quickly becoming a society where if you don't take the opportunity to speak about it and you only react, then the government has no other choice but to place you in an institution. And oftentimes those institutions are correctional institutions. So your depression, your anxiety, your anger, the domestic violence that can come about, that didn't have to happen. Perhaps if in that conversation within that couple, um, it doesn't matter male, female, male, male, it doesn't matter who your relationship is with, your partner is what matters. And if you can't be honest with your partner and get these feelings out with respect, and then get some positive feedback and learn some tools to deal with it, then you're left with the reaction. And the reactions are what we deal with. That we deal with them in the correctional institutes. We deal with them in perhaps lack of intimacy with partners, the the marriages that are end in divorce. So then you have children that are not parented by both parents. It's a cascade of effects that I think we should, as a society, accept, take responsibility for, and then seek to change so that we can improve the life of men, improve the life of the family itself, and absolutely improve the respect level that we give all of our boys that are born into this world. The Lord, created the body. He created the foreskin. It's there for a reason. We need to educate people on what the foreskin is for. So that in activism for me, I oftentimes talk about what is foreskin. If you don't have it, you don't know it. You don't know why your sexual organ, your penis, is lacking of feeling. You think that this is normal. So you reach out, you try to find sexual gratification in some way. If the organ isn't working the way that it should, then maybe you reach out and set sexual gratification ways in areas like, for example, pornography. I know that in our own marriage, mine and Billy's, we tried that. He wanted me to be with him when he watched that. He thought that that could help him in his intimacy because he would have performance issues. So he couldn't perform to his satisfaction. And I personally was not comfortable with witnessing or watching that. I felt like I had to help him, to be in support of him. But for me personally, it did not put me in a good mindset or in a healthy place. So in that aspect, I understand the use of pornography. It has a long history, and of course that would be a whole different conversation. But for Billy, the only thing that he thought that he could go to deal with his issues was that. There's no help groups, there's no AA meeting that you can go to talk about this. So he used self-help. And in our case, it didn't work. So talking about it, being an activist for it is how you go about making these changes. So me personally, I'm going to be very open and honest when I have these conversations with people because this is something very touchy. It's taboo. It's really taboo. I live in Alabama, and circumcision down here is common. Many of the mothers that I talk to are hostile to me. They feel like they had their right to make that decision and that they had the right to make the decision over their child because it was their baby. So if that mindset of power is not talked about in the mother understanding that the role of the parent is not to be in a power position and to force decisions on the child, then that relationship is harmed growing up. And parents wonder why their children leave home and don't want to answer the phone calls, don't want to come visit at Thanksgiving. They never saw the problem as the child was growing, that inside that young little boy who had to grow into a man, that he never felt like his voice was being heard. And then when he grows up, if he has the same mindset, if he doesn't have tools in his tool belt to deal with emotions, then that is going to bleed over into his new relationships. So it can become a problem in the marriage with intimacy. And then if you break up the family, then you compound the problem. So what we should be looking at is not only educating the family to understand what rights that the infant should have, We should be looking at this as a big picture conversation where ultimately, at the end of the day, we want healthy men. We want healthy fathers. We want healthy relationships. And the backbone of any country is the family structure. Now, it can be any way that you want that family to be. Man, woman, 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 man, man. That these are structures. So to keep it safe, to keep it going strong, so we as a country can have a society that is strong, you have to educate on how to keep the family structure healthy and working. And this conversation is absolutely one of the most important conversations, I think, as a society at this point that we need to take, because we know that marriages are the percentages of marriages taking place have dropped. The percentages of those marriages that break up are going higher. The even the birth rate. If you go to any kind of search engine, Google, Bing, or any of these type search engines, you'll find that the birth rates have fallen dramatically, not just in the United States, but worldwide. And if you can't replace the births with the deaths, then as a society, you will fail. Rome fell because they could not replace their citizens. They had too many deaths and not enough births to keep the civilization going. And that can happen in as many as 2 generations. And you look as a generation as 20 years. So in our in our research, if you go back 40 years ago and look at the birth rates and then compare them to 20 years ago and then compare them to now, you will see the writing is on the wall that as a society, as a country, we will not be able to replace our population in the next 20 years. There are more deaths than there are births. And if you can't replace the population, then who are the workers going to be? If you don't have any workers, then who is going to take care of those that are here already? The way society works is, we work until we get to an age that we can't work, and then we hope that our children take care of us. If we can't have children, who is going to take care of us? It's very, it's very important that we get this message out, because at the end of the day, we will go away as a society. We will go away as a country. We will fail as a people because we were destroyed from within. And part of that destruction came from a procedure that caused a cascade of effects. So I don't know how many positive things that you could say about circumcision. I don't know why. I mean, maybe if there's penis cancer or some horrible other disease aspect that would have to take place, okay. Then the person would deal with it as a patient with their caregivers and their medical professionals. But when this indiscriminate use of this procedure that has been scientifically proven to cause permanent damaging, permanent changing to the chemical processing in the brain of the infant child, the male child. And then these are the people that grow up that we expect to be leaders in the community, fathers, husbands, the policeman, the fireman. I mean, we have to have men in society as much as we have to have women.
That was Sherrie Saunders' Part 2 interview. Let me know what you thought of it by commenting down below. Please give us a like and subscribe so you don't miss the final interview, as Sherrie reveals much more and gives us her thoughts. Thank you guys for hanging out with me and Sherrie. It was an awesome time. Bye.